This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 2, Episode 42 of the Jumblethink Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we share some tips and ideas of how you can chase your own big ideas and dreams and change the world around you. Our guest on today's episode is Michael Greenberg. More about Michael in a moment. Our guest on Thursday's episode is Tom Poland. He is the founder and creator of Leadsology. He's also the author of Leadsology, The Science Behind Being in Demand. Make sure to check out Thursday's episode with Tom Poland. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host and so glad you've chosen to join today's episode with Michael Greenberg. Before we get into the episode, I want to encourage you wherever you like to listen to podcasts, go find the Jumblethink Podcast and click subscribe. We've made it easy for you if you like iTunes or if you like Spotify. If you swing on over to jumblethink.com/iTunes or jumblethink.com/Spotify, it'll take you right to the place where you can subscribe to the Jumblethink Podcast. If you like listening elsewhere, you can find us there too. Just go search for us, Jumblethink, and make sure you click that subscribe button. Now let's learn a little bit about today's guest, Michael Greenberg.
My name is Michael Greenberg. I am the founder of Call for Content, where I act as the chief interviewer and strategist. So we help businesses with their content marketing by doing done-for-you content marketing services. And then we also help executive coaches by creating content in their own voice. I have been working with a podcast network for a little over a year, and they asked me to find a way to do something with the 6,000 hours of podcasts they had in their backlog. So I started looking into speech to text, and in the process learned that people speak much better in most cases than they can write, as well as much faster. So I started developing processes using various kinds of interviews and converting them into content. And then once I had that content, I had to figure out what to do with it afterwards, and that progressed into content marketing. I really love what I do because as a business owner, I get to employ people. And sometimes they reach the point at which they then want to hire my business for what they're doing on the side. I prefer to hire freelancers so that way they can work on entrepreneurial pursuits. And so my real hope and purpose at the end of the day is that one of the people that I work with in the business can go out and then wants to hire the business back to work with them. What I do matters because most of the content that companies put out today is either using antiquated SEO strategies and hurting them in the long run, or it's just bad. It's not good content, and we don't need more bad content in the world. So I try, and what I really try to do is anyone who downloads one of our resources or works with us or just hops on the phone with me, I try to teach about good content so we have good content out there in the world that we actually want to consume and learn from. I'm really excited about our new launch. We're going to be launching a new strategy service for clients that gives them access to our whole network of service providers at cost. And along with that, we're also going to be launching a dictation service for clients to take the process we use and start applying it to some of their own work without contracting with us for full done-for-you content.
In a moment, we'll continue our conversation with Michael Greenberg. But first, we wanted to let you know about some free resources we have for you right now. If you swing on over to jumblethink.com/guide, that's jumblethink.com/guide, you can download our 2 free guides. The first one is Overcoming the Unknown, and the second one is How to Know When You Found Your Dream. Both guides will help you on the journey of chasing big ideas and dreams and changing the world around you. So make sure you swing on over to jumblethink.com/guide. That's jumblethink.com/guide to download your free guides. Now let's return to our conversation with Michael Greenberg. Our guest today is Michael Greenberg. Michael, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here today.
Now, I want to make sure before we jump into the interview that people know how they can find and connect with you. So can you tell us how to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Gent of Tech. That's GENT of Tech. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I believe the social is in the show notes. And of course, you can find me at callforcontent.com.
And we'll make sure to put those links in the episode notes. It's really good to have you on. When we did our vetting and our process of preparing for the interview, one of the topics that came up that you're passionate about, that I'm excited to talk about, we're going to dive right into it, and that's the alternative to business schools. I think education is going through a questioning right now on what are great ways to learn, what are affordable ways to learn, and what brings most value to you. So tell us a little bit about that process for you while you're rediscovering or rethinking how we learn in the business sphere.
Yeah. So business schools are a fairly new thing. And past 30, 40 years, maybe. And what we think of as every school having a business school is really something that's only happened in the past 30 years.
Okay.
Business schools often charge more compared to the other schools of a university, and yet the education they provide is something that really can't be taught in a classroom.
Yeah.
I don't think you can learn to do business by sitting there listening to somebody who probably hasn't done any sort of for-profit work in the past decade talk about their studies in that thing.
Yeah.
And so the whole business school, and especially business schools outside of maybe top 20, aren't returning. The degrees they're granting are not degrees that really provide ROI.
Okay.
And for a business school, you'd think that would be the only metric that would matter.
Yeah, for sure.
I personally believe that since you have to really learn by doing, the best way to go about learning the various parts of business is by apprenticing under people who understand it better.
Yeah. So let's define what we are talking about for business schools. Are we talking like MBA programs? Are we talking about fundamental business schools like at the bachelor level? When we're talking about business, are we talking about preparation for like the small business, the medium business, a corporation? Like what kind of education are we talking here?
I'd say all of the above.
Okay.
In the majority of cases, top 20, top 10 MBA programs are very good at training you for the companies that hire from that specific program.
Yeah.
And that's really what they're designed to do. Outside of that, most of the programs aren't teaching anything that's worth that $100,000 price tag for an MBA, or at a private school for a bachelor's in business, even more, 150 or 200,000 for something that could literally, you could learn everything about business you would learn in a bachelor's in a 6-month internship.
Wow.
Because most of it's just professionalism.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I find interesting about this is that from what you're saying, it sounds like the main reason why you would go and learn this way isn't about the knowledge itself. It's about the network in which you're getting into by being at that university. So if you're in a top 20, you have a network that's very strong. And so it gives you a conduit to then be onboarded in a corporation or have the network to position yourself. Whereas if you get into some of the private schools and that kind of thing, they may have the networks and stuff like that, but but you could probably do that by simply building the relationships on your own.
Exactly. And for me, a university of any type really only has three primary functions.
Okay.
And then there's a fourth function that some of them add to the mix, that we'll get to in just a minute.
So what are those three with the fourth?
To ease communication
Okay.
within groups of people who are interested in similar subjects, to match students with mentors,
Okay.
and then to verify the completion of a course of learning.
Okay.
And for number three, I really think that that is not a valuable thing,
Yeah.
because learning does not tell me what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. You could be a straight A student and still have not built the skills that actually are required to do the job.
Exactly. You might have the grit to do those things, and a lot of engineering schools, they're really teaching you how to think,
Mhm.
but there's not much teaching how to think in a business school. It's quite the opposite. In fact, they teach you how to agree. I think in many cases they teach you how to work together, but not always in the ways that are going to produce the best results.
Yeah.
And then the fourth function is to act as a gate to that community that you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And the fourth function is a valuable one. I
Yeah.
won't deny that. But it's also not what most schools do.
So many questions swirling in my head. The first one that comes to mind is when you talk about these internships, it almost sounds like what you're saying is that we need to have a return to almost like a guild system where you apprentice, you get into a relationship, and you learn by proximity. You learn from hands on experience, and you're learning from a master in the trade to learn your trade. And the trade in this case is simply being an executive or running a business.
Yeah. Or it could be marketing, or it could be sales, or any of those distinct functions within. But you're not going to learn. The only people that I'll hire fresh out of school for sales were Cutco sales reps,
Okay.
because they already know how to cold call. They've been through the grind of sales.
Yeah.
That's a great apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Would I hire somebody fresh out of school to do marketing? I'd train them. They'd just be working with me for 3 to 6 months on learning how to do marketing today, because especially as these disciplines have gone digital,
Mhm.
and the tools have been updated that we use, it's not just pen and paper anymore.
Yeah.
You have to learn the latest trends, and the way that a university creates curriculum means that they can never teach those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really have to be in it to stay on the pulse of what's going on. You can't be trying to keep up. You actually have to be in there doing the work and keeping up, because you're doing the process in real time instead of trying to learn it from an educational, from a studying standpoint. To study something that's evolving, you're never going to be current. You're always going to be behind.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So a lot of corporations and even mid-cap businesses are going to want to see that piece of paper that says you've completed the degree. I mean, we all see it on these job boards when we're looking at different jobs. They're going, hey, I want at least a bachelor's of this or a master's of that. And if they're looking at executives or people that are on a C-level for these businesses, they're going to want to see that paperwork. How do people get around that and start finding sources, these apprenticeships, getting those values, and then networking into the right places so that they can make that horizontal move instead of making the vertical move from college into the job?
So it really is all about networking.
Okay.
It's about who you know and who understands that you're good at these things. Now, how you communicate that could be through a portfolio. It could be through a few letters of recommendation from people who hold weight in their community.
Okay.
Or it could be, let's say you're a writer, it could be a finished book.
Okay.
It could be a project.
Yeah.
And that's really the way to prove it. Most people don't get jobs from resumes today. They get jobs from referrals.
Okay.
And that is the way that it's probably going to remain, simply because of the trust that's built when you're being referred into a company.
So it is that old phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah. Though in this case, it's who knows what you know.
Okay. All right. Which is a different spin on it, and it brings different value to what you're communicating. Well, then how do you build a network and communicate these things to get positioned in the right place to open the doors that you're longing to go through? How do you set yourself up as that person who has the knowledge to do the job?
If you're young, and by young I mean if you're in your 20s or just starting out your career and later on, people want to talk to you,
Okay.
especially people who are late in their career
Yeah.
and who have got places. Most of the executives I know actively want to mentor, but they're not going to seek out people to mentor by themselves. And the initiative that it takes to actually reach out to them and ask for a cup of coffee is initiative that 95 or 99% of your, we'll call them your competition, isn't going to do.
Yeah.
And so it's taking those first steps. And once you meet a few people, I'm a fan just reaching out cold on LinkedIn and via email.
Mhm.
Once you've got 5 or 10, they're going to refer you to other people,
Okay.
and the network will build itself.
So it's as simple as just stopping and saying, "Hey, would you like to grab coffee? I'd like to learn from you."
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the best ways to reach out? Is it jumping on LinkedIn and dropping some messages there? Is it dropping an email, picking up the phone and giving a call? How do we reach these people that we want to become? How do we reach out and get FaceTime with them when we don't even know how to reach them?
Email is probably the best way,
Okay.
though I found LinkedIn to be just a great source to find those people in the first place. Most executives or most people in business are going to spend several hours a day in their inbox.
Yeah.
And during one of those hours, they could be reading your message.
Wow.
Following up is really important, though. It
Yeah.
might not be the first, it might be the fifth that you send them,
Okay.
but it's the tenacity. If they haven't told you never contact me again, then you've still okay to keep going.
Right. Well, and I find it fascinating from a podcaster standpoint. I mean, I run a business and work with other businesses doing what we do, but I find it interesting from the podcast standpoint how many people I've reached out, and it really tells you a lot about the individual and whether you'd even want to be around them just by how they respond. And it's interesting how some of the most successful and busy people still make time for people who want to become leaders or influencers or learn the skill set that these executives, these influencers have built. It's interesting that you can really tell who the person is by the responses you get too.
Yeah, definitely. And that you brought it up, a podcast. Just start a podcast and interview the people that you want to be in. Just make your podcast to be, let's say you want to be the best salesperson in the world. Make a podcast about sales leaders and go interview them.
Yeah.
It's a great way to increase your response rate and be able to give them a little something back at the same time.
Yeah. So, how do we start creating a culture that embraces this philosophy of growing leaders, growing knowledge sets, building executives? How do we create a culture that says maybe our systems, as they are with traditional education, aren't doing as well as they could be? Maybe there's another way. How do we create that change?
Well, I think we're on that path as it stands today.
Okay.
I think that as more online learning options and more alternative education options come forward, things like coding boot camps that have popped up in the past few years
Yeah.
to help solve these gaps in demand are showing people surely but slowly that the traditional model isn't producing the people we need any longer.
Yeah.
And if you're a business owner and you have the extra $1,000 or $2,000 in your budget every month, hire an apprentice and start teaching them what you do. You will be amazed how quickly somebody will pick up almost any skill set if you give them the freedom to learn it.
You're giving them opportunity, but I love that freedom to learn it. I just think a fascinating statement. How can we, through mentorship, really begin to multiply ourselves? How can we begin to find and filter from the flip side of things? We've talked about the people who are coming up through the system, and instead of choosing maybe traditional education, they're getting into these apprenticeships. But as a person that is mentoring on the flip side and offering these apprenticeships, what should we be doing to set up the people that are coming to us for success?
First off, have an idea of what you want to teach them.
Okay.
That's really important, I think, to an apprenticeship, and what takes it from mentorship to apprenticeship is knowing what your end goal is.
Okay.
And knowing what the person looks like at the end. What functions are they able to accomplish on their own now?
Yeah.
Or what things do you think they're prepared to do?
Okay.
So to bring it down to earth, I, for my business, know that I need somebody who understands how you take spoken word and transcribe it and turn it into content.
Mm-hmm.
I need them to understand how I do outreach for PR, for sales, for any of those areas, and how to build the lists for those things. And then I need somebody to understand at the high level how content marketing works, how it brings in business, and how you develop a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And it's bringing in those high level skills that separates them from what I might call an intern or a standard worker.
Okay.
And I will then give that person, as they build, give them an entire project. So they might take on the dictation service I'm building and manage the marketing for that. But they might only have been with me for 9 months when that happens.
Yeah. So it's building that credibility, and then from their standpoint, they've proven themselves, and then you give them the freedom to flourish or fail, but you give them that platform in which they can step into what you've been working with them and really do it, not just sit there and watch it on the sidelines.
Exactly. And just like the guilds way back in the day, they start with just doing the rote learning, doing little pieces of the process again and again and again. But you quickly want to get them to start creating their own things and start having that freedom to operate. To act more like a journeyman is the terminology from guilds when they're allowed to leave their master and go out on their own.
I want to pivot here a little bit. I love this conversation about reapproaching learning and how we learn and how we teach. But I want to go a little bit in a different direction and talk a little bit more about what you do with Call for Content, which is your company. What is it that Call for Content does, and what is it that you offer your company or your clients? Sorry.
So right now we offer done-for-you content marketing starting from $1,000 per month.
Yeah.
And that last part was where I actually started the planning process for Call for Content. I started by reaching out to content marketing firms that I knew, finding out what their minimums were, reaching out to customer bases, finding out what their budgets were, and then finding a nice gap in that market.
Okay. Why would people want to have someone create content for them, do this done for you content? Why is that valuable to an entrepreneur, for that matter?
You probably don't have time to create all your own content.
Right.
And if you do right now, you will eventually not have the time to do so if your business continues to grow.
Absolutely.
You might not have the skill sets to create that content on your own. Maybe you're a great speaker, but you're a horrible writer. Maybe you just don't know how to promote the content afterwards. Having somebody who knows the end to end means that you have somebody who can work with you and develop the system that works for your business.
Yeah.
Because especially for entrepreneurs and especially for B2B, you have to have a close relationship.
Yeah.
And content helps you develop that relationship by positioning you as an authority in the topics most related to your product or service.
So, what kind of content are you creating for the individuals that you work for or the businesses you work for?
I focus on blog posts, generally a little bit longer
Okay.
than you might see other places.
Yeah.
We don't do many 500 word. We might make a 3,000 word
Yeah.
that can be chopped up
Okay.
into the 5 or 600 word,
Right.
but then it'll really be a series of posts on a single subject.
Okay.
And then we make podcasts.
Okay.
And I come from a podcasting background, so I love those. They create great content for you, and we're just getting into video now. But that's an offering that I'm playing around with, that you'll see us starting to put out some videos, and then hopefully we'll have a process ready to bring to market towards the end of this year.
So, what are these individuals doing to get the content out there, or what are you doing to help them promote those articles, promote the podcast, the other pieces of collateral you're creating? How are they utilizing that content, or how are you positioning that content for them?
We operate in a few different ways when it comes to promoting content.
Okay.
We're going to make sure that it gets out on all your social media channels. We're going to make sure it gets sent out in a newsletter to anyone who's signed up for your newsletter.
Yeah.
And that's an email newsletter, if that wasn't clear. But we're also going to put targeted ad spend behind it to promote the content or create ads that advertise the content to your target market. And I'm a really big fan of that, because you can then see who's clicking on what content and track them and really start to develop a profile of where specific prospects might be within your funnel and within the buying process, more importantly. And then we're going to reach out to people. And that might be reaching out to podcasts. That might be reaching out to meetups in your local area. But we're going to help you build partnerships with other content creators and with other businesses to then create content that serves your market from another angle. So if you're an IT firm and all you do is IT staffing, maybe it's bringing in a cybersecurity firm and doing a piece together with them.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's bringing in a marketing agency and talking about how your two businesses work together.
Okay.
So partnerships is how I describe that sort of work.
One of the things we started out with talking about was the fact that colleges or apprenticeships are all about part of the key to them is the network you're building and letting people know where you're an expert. But it seems like this content can help also tell that story of the expertise and the place that you are the authority. Why do we need to position ourselves as the expert or authority in a specific space? And how can we use that to our benefit as an entrepreneur or as a business owner?
Great question. And it really comes down to relationships.
Okay.
People don't buy from businesses, they buy from people.
Right.
And you want to be buying from the guy who knows more about the thing you're buying than almost anyone else.
Yeah.
Or who's better at doing the thing that you need them to do than almost anyone else. And the best way to show somebody that you know about that is to actually do that thing for them. But the second best way is to create a whole bunch of content or to show off your expertise.
Okay.
So the content is really about showing that you're an authority so that people trust you to buy from you in the future.
Okay.
And educating them on all the little things that you need them to know.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes to me, I want them to know that content marketing is not SEO.
Okay.
It has SEO benefits. It might look kind of like SEO on the surface, but they are totally different disciplines at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants an SEO, they shouldn't come to me.
Yeah.
And ideally, I want them to know that before I have to speak with them.
Okay, so I think there's some gold in what you just said there. Some really powerful thoughts there. One of them that stood out to me was that so often on our websites we're just putting content up there to do the search engine optimization thing. If I have tons of good content, then search engines will find me, then people will find me. But it sounds like creating this content in this done for you content is much more about being intentional about the specific content you're producing. So it reinforces that place of authority and leadership in a specific space. How can we become more specific, like you're saying here, to really narrow ourselves down so we're not just putting out content, but we're putting out content that is intentional about the outcome we're trying to achieve?
I think you start with the outcome.
Okay.
If your goal is more sales or better qualified sales, then you know that for more qualified sales, you need to talk a little bit more about what you do or the differences between what you do and other services. If you want more sales, then you do need to put out more content, but you need to put out content that's then specific to the problems of the customers you want to reach.
Yeah.
Because if you're not putting out something that's interesting to the person who's supposed to be reading it, then you're not going to get that person on the other end.
Okay.
And with analytics today, you can tell if people are reading your content.
Right.
And with ads, you can drive traffic to your content from a targeted demographic or firmographic very quickly.
All right.
And so if you do those things, for $100, you will know if you've got good content.
Yeah. Before we wrap up this segment, I really wanted to take a moment and talk about a lifestyle of entrepreneurship, because you are, on your dad's side, you're a 5th generation entrepreneur. On your mom's side, you're a 3rd generation entrepreneur. This is something very much in your blood. How do you create a lifestyle of entrepreneurship? Because I think in our society right now, in the time and history we're at right now, having that stability of creating your own career, your own choices is becoming a powerful choice for many. So how do you create that lifestyle that really sets you up for success in the entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I think you start by focusing on problems and then trying to develop solutions for them.
Yeah.
And most of the solutions that you develop are going to be bad.
Right.
But occasionally, one of them might be good enough that you think of it 2 or 3 times. And that's one that it might be worth exploring, that might be a business.
Yeah.
Or you might have somebody who owns a business or who works in a business or who has a budget to purchase things who says, man, if I could find this thing, I would buy it today.
Okay.
Offer that thing to them.
All right.
You might not have the thing that they want. You might know nothing about it yet. But if you can sell it to somebody, then you probably have the beginnings of a market. And if you can sell it to somebody and it's something you think you can actually fulfill, then you have the beginnings of a business.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter of going at it again and again and again until you get good enough at it that you understand that you can pick out the problems that are actually going to make money and cut away the rest. Yeah. I personally recommend you reach out to a bunch of entrepreneurs and you try to apprentice with one. 6 months or a year under somebody who's already been there and done that is going to teach you an enormous amount about the various issues that come along with it. Yeah. Because as attractive as it sounds to own your own business, it's really choosing torture, in my opinion. It's choosing to now rely solely upon yourself to pay your rent and to pay other people's rent in the long term. Yeah. And that pressure has to be something that you want to take on, that you understand the responsibilities that come with it.
You have a really cool book that helps answer some of the questions we've talked about today. And I think it's a resource that many people find valuable in their journey. Tell us about that book.
So it's called the Authority Marketing Playbook. You can find it at callforcontent.com/amp, AMP. And it starts out with all of my thoughts around authority and how you get it.
Okay.
Um, it goes through some exercises on helping you niche down and position yourself as an authority in something that can actually make money.
Okay.
And then it goes into more of the systems and processes we use at Call for Content to develop content strategies for our clients. It goes into detail on the kinds of content we produce. There's a whole list in there of every kind of podcast and blog we produce. And if you go back through our stuff, you'll be able to pick them out one by one. It goes through different kinds of partnerships, how to set up those partnerships, and really everything you need to get from nobody knows who I am to some people know who I am and think I'm good at this thing.
Mm.
And so it's designed to be that first step into positioning yourself as an authority.
Very, very cool. I definitely recommend checking it out. As we wrap up this segment, I want to make sure that we circle back and make sure everyone knows how they can connect and find you. So share those methods again, and we'll make sure to include them in the episode notes too.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Gent of Tech. That's GENTOFTECH. You can find me on LinkedIn. That will be in the notes because I have a long name. And you can find me at callforcontent.com. I've also got a Medium blog, but that is mainly going to be me rambling about education. If you want to hear me ramble more about it, then it's also at Gent of Tech.
We'll make sure to include all of those in the episode notes, and we'll be right back with Michael Greenberg and our rapid fire questions. Chasing your big ideas and dreams can be overwhelming, it can be scary and hard to do. Well, you don't have to do it alone. The Jumble Think team has helped hundreds of business owners take their idea and make it into a reality. I would love to help you. The easiest way to do it is swing on over to jumblethink.com/helpme. That's jumblethink.com/helpme. Learn a little bit more about our coaching, mentoring, and consulting services, and then let's start the conversation. Fill out that form, drop us a note, and let's start the conversation. Dreams and big ideas are always easier to chase when you have someone along on the journey, and we'd love to be that for you. We look forward to starting the conversation soon. Now let's jump into our rapid fire questions with Michael Greenberg. We are back with Michael Greenberg and our rapid fire questions. Michael, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
I am ready.
Cool. Our first question is, what is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea and dream and they don't know where to start?
Go sell it.
Okay. What does that mean?
Start selling it to people.
Okay.
Somebody has to buy that thing at some point or give you money to do that thing in all likelihood. So go sell it.
What's one change you'd like to see in the world?
Get rid of private schools.
Okay.
I think they pull a lot of money away from where we could otherwise concentrate into a few really excellent public schools.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably a new school.
Okay.
I'd like to develop a school based off the apprenticeship models I talked about earlier.
Where do you find inspiration?
Nature and historical figures mainly.
Okay. Very cool.
For different things.
Yeah. Any specific historical character?
Not characters so much as a specific period.
Okay.
I'm a really big fan of the Russian defense on the Eastern Front during World War II.
Oh, wow.
The circumstances that led up to Russia being invaded like that are very interesting. Stalin didn't believe Hitler was going to invade because they had a pact, even though all his generals told him he would.
Yeah.
And he actually killed off a lot of the major tank generals who had developed some really great new strategies for the Soviets that eventually came to bear much later in the war. And the Eastern Front is really where World War II was won.
Wow. What is one book you think every entrepreneur or dreamer should read, and why?
Mastery by Robert Greene.
Okay.
It's an excellent book on how to become a master at something.
Yeah.
It's long and it's a kind of boring to read. So if you can get through that and learn from it, then you'll be much better set for the future.
What is one tool that is significant for the success of your business?
Paper.
Okay.
I like to do everything on paper.
Yeah. What is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
Before I check my phone in the morning, I watch 15 minutes of stand-up.
Okay.
It's a great way to start the day with a laugh.
Yeah.
And it really relaxes you before you open that email.
Okay. That's very cool. I love that. How do you start and finish your day?
So, as I said, I start my day with that 15 minutes of comedy.
Yeah.
I end my day reading or
Okay.
meditating or talking with friends. I shut down screens about an hour before bed.
Cool. If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd probably be working in finance.
Okay. And our final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Yeah, so I'd really like to build that school
Yeah.
mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's actually something I'm hoping to get started on in the next year or two and build out a more distinct model for the apprenticeships and for sort of the verification that these things have happened over time.
Yeah. That's very cool. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with the final thought. So what's one last thought you would like to leave us with today?
What shouldn't you be doing that you're doing in your business?
And what do we do with that?
Well, you stop doing that thing, or if it's something that must be done, you hire somebody else to do it.
Such great advice. Michael, it's been a lot of fun having you on the podcast today. Thanks for taking time out, giving us some insights into incredible topics, and encouraging us all to do awesome things. So appreciate you having you on the podcast today, and thanks again for taking time out.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Once again, we want to thank today's guest, Michael Greenberg, for taking time out to chat with us. You can find all of the links to his website, his book, and social channels in the episode notes of today's episode. On Thursday's episode, our guest is Tom Poland. It's going to be super fun, so make sure to check out Thursday's episode. If you have big ideas and dreams, don't put it off. Today is a great day to start. And one way to start is to start the conversation with others. And we'd love to be that sounding board for you. If you swing on over to jumblethink.com/helpme, that's jumblethink.com/helpme, let's start the conversation and see how we can help turn that idea from an idea and into a reality. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. It's always an honor to have you along to listen to our amazing guests and to hear us share ideas about entrepreneurship and how you can make ideas real. Until next time, make sure you get out there, take a step, any step, and move your big ideas and dreams forward and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.